And for the next 16 months, my every waking moment was spent building Walter White's drug empire.
Hold on, Mr. Goodman, stop right there.
What is up, Better Call Saul fans? My name is Merch, and we have sadly made it to the end of the road, the series finale. And after watching this episode, I honestly don't even know where to start because so much happened in this episode, from the choices that were made to the cameos, and then there's the ending. Oh my god. It was definitely a series finale done right, even tying up loose ends and basically giving us deleted scenes from Breaking Bad in the process. So it's a win-win situation with this series. So in this video, I'll be breaking down and reviewing the series finale of Better Call Saul and just giving my overall take on the episode. And if you could leave a like on this video to support the channel and even consider subscribing to stay up to date with the latest content, I'd appreciate it. But enough about me, let's talk about Saul, Jimmy, yeah, right? So like I said, so much happened in this episode I honestly could not have predicted in a million years that in the end, Saul Goodman would turn down a plea deal for 7 years that he argued down from a life plus 190 years in prison, and he settled somewhere in the middle with 86 years. And the way he negotiated that deal during this episode had to be the most annoying and nerve-wracking thing I had to watch ever, because the whole time you're hoping that he's able to con his way out of prison time some kind of way in the old Saul Goodman fashion that we all know and love, because he literally has a prosecuting attorney begging him to take the deal, and he keeps trying to push it from requesting specific prison location down to the cell block and wing, and even joking about wanting to have ice cream once a month for the duration of his sentence. Mint chocolate chip, by the way. And honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if it actually worked, because if you've seen the movie Law Abiding Citizen, Gerard Butler in that movie made a district attorney bring him a steak dinner in exchange for a confession, and look how that turned out. And another thing I liked in this episode is that there are so many cameos, from Marie to Chuck, and then the man, the myth, the legend, unhinged Walter White, which is my favorite Walter White. And during this episode, I love how he's just peak asshole here. And I love how Saul asked Walter that same time travel question that he had as Mike in the beginning of the episode. And unlike Mike's answer, which was honestly poetic by him saying that he'd go back to the day that he took his first bride, because obviously then he wouldn't be in that situation. But Walter, in this case, he points out the impossibility of time travel, and he doesn't even want to play his games, talking about, yo, if you want to talk about regrets, let's talk about regrets, but let's not play this stupid game about time travel, because these two guys have two different angles in this situation at this point in time. Because Walter, he's upset that he has to run because he doesn't want to, especially from his family, but Saul, he's just accepted it because, you know, that's Saul, he always runs. And that's shown when they talk about regrets, as Saul's one regret that he revealed to Walter is that when he was 20, he did a slip and fall and he ended up hurting his knee. That was his one regret, not being responsible for Howard's death or even Chuck's death or even his marriage for that matter, him hurting his knee. Okay. And during this scene, we also learn a bit more about the relationship with Gretchen and Elliot and the role they played in buying out Walter White and the Gray Matter Company. Basically telling him the same thing that he had said to Jesse about how if he had not sold his potential, so to speak, that he wouldn't even be with him now. And honestly, I don't know whether to believe Walter or not, because he could be just a hater, but then again, we don't really know that relationship with Gretchen, Elliot, and Walter like all the way through. So there's room for a spinoff potentially. Who knows? Maybe like a young Walter. I'll say it right now. But in this moment, we actually do get a glimpse of the real Jimmy when he asked Walter, why didn't he come to him with that gray matter issue? Because Saul could have really helped him the right way. Because we see the things that he was willing to do for his clients. Remember when he taped together that shredded paper? I mean, if that's not dedication to your client, I don't know what is. And it really makes me think of what the series would have been like had Walter knew Saul's true legal potential. Like, just imagine that. And speaking of legal potential, who would have thought that Saul Goodman would have requested legal counsel from Bill Oakley, his old nemesis back in the day of Albuquerque, and together they were able to secure a fate that Saul wanted, even if that meant losing. And Oakley was honestly a standout for me because he could not get a break with Saul. Even after he apparently secured the best plea deal in 22 years, Saul still finds a way to leave him dumbfounded. And I love the side eye that he gives Saul when he says that it's showtime. I just thought it was funny.
It's showtime.
But during that final court scene, it was definitely a standout moment for me in the series because he was able to merge his Saul Goodman and Jimmy McGill persona and deliver a confession that was for the first time the complete truth, taking full responsibility for Howard's murder and clearing Kim's name in the process, because unknown to her, Saul told the DA about her involvement with Howard's death, but that was just to get her to come to Albuquerque to hear his testimony, because he made her come from Florida all the way to New Mexico just to hear him talk. I mean, only he could have done that. But then he tells the judge, the jury, the lawyers, everyone, including Kim, Marie, and the wife of Steve Gomez, that if it wasn't for him, Walter White would have been dead or in jail within a month, and he's the one who kept him out of jail, basically saying that he's responsible for Walter White, taking full responsibility for his actions. And the last thing he says while he's on the stand is that he's responsible for Chuck's suicide, which is a long-awaited payoff since his death, because we never seen him deal with that. And you can just tell during his confession, it was like he was transformed, because when he's done talking, he corrects the judge by saying that his name is McGill, James McGill, a name that he hasn't used in over over 6 years. And you can tell in that moment he's ready to take whatever comes his way because he's owned up to everything, fessed up to everything in front of the one person that matters to him in the entire world. And of course he goes to prison because obviously, right? And I'm not sure how long him being Jimmy's gonna stick, because as he's on his way to prison, he unintentionally starts a bus full of prisoners to get hype, chanting his name, saying, "Better call Saul, better call Saul." And you see that he has a slight smirk on his face like, well, I guess this is me. Because if you think about it, him being Saul in prison is literally the best person for him to be for the next 86 years, because those are his people, and even the guards are calling him Saul. So I think he's in a good place to live. And while he's in prison, you see that he's working in the kitchen, and what is he doing in the kitchen? Mixing dough, just like he was in Cinnabon, and it's still in black and white, so it kind of goes to show that it could have just been a two-way street for Saul in this case. But he does get a surprise visit from his lawyer, who, of course, we all know is going to be Kim in this situation. I predicted that, but I could not predict that she had just snuck into prison basically Daredevil style, because her bar card does not expire, and that's why she's able to kind of pretend to be his lawyer in this case. And during their time together, they simply share a cigarette, calling back to the first episode where we were introduced to Kim and Jimmy, and little was said other than them talking about the potential plea deal. And for me, that was all I needed to see between them, because how I read this scene, it was like a goodbye they were saying to each other, and they didn't have to say it to know it. And that's why when Kim was leaving the prison for the last time, Jimmy gave her the double finger guns, but she didn't give it back. But basically that's him saying he'll be okay. And as Kim's walking away, she looks back one last time, officially putting Jimmy behind her, literally and figuratively. Now I'm sure other people have different interpretations of this scene, and honestly I love to hear people's opinion in the comments, so please let me know, because I do respond, by the way. But now that I've seen the series finale, I'm definitely going to rewatch the series and then rewatch Breaking Bad to see if it changes my viewing experience, with the knowledge that Saul is a true architect of this empire. But I'll let you know how that goes. Anyways, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the beginning of the episode where Gene is on the run. And in that first 13 minutes, I was really hoping that Gene would get away, because we see him get away from Marion's house, we see him go home and get his box of memories, and we see that he has a cabinet full of these unused burner phones. He takes one and leaves out the back window as cops arrive at his house. And while he was running, I was just as on edge as he was, especially when he jumps in the dumpster. And I thought maybe he can actually pull this off. Maybe he can just like sit in the dumpster until things lay low. And honestly, I did not think he'd get arrested this early, but in comparison to the rest of the episode, it all made sense. And while he's being booked, he's pacing around in a holding cell, regretting his actions, just saying, why would you do this? Why would you do this? Then he keeps saying to himself, this is how they get you? Is this really how they get you? Over and over until he breaks down laughing. And then he hatches a plan by asking for another phone call, because his first call was used to call a coworker at Cinnabon to tell them that they're going to need a new manager, which was very Gustavo Fring-like in my opinion. But it also highlights how sad this moment is, because in that moment he has no one to call, and maybe he just didn't want to go out on bad terms with Cinnabon or put that on his resume for jail, but man, like it just said a lot without saying anything at all. But that was the finale of Better Call Saul, and honestly it was not what I expected, but I love what I got, and I would not change a single thing, and I'm so happy that I was wrong with my predictions. But I have one last question. What happened to Jeff? Nah, I'm just kidding. I don't really care about him. But I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of the series finale of Better Call Saul? Was it worth it to you? And if there was a spinoff, what would you want it to be about? Me personally, I'd love to see a Kim spinoff of her starting a practice back in Florida, which was hinted at in the episode where Kim volunteered at that free law office. But that's just me. But I want to hear from you guys. Whatever it is, comment down below and let me know, and I'll do my best to respond. Until then, my name is Merge. Later.
So, after all that, a happy ending.